Hey guys, we are live. Welcome to the Bags to Riches podcast. I'm Zach Ginn, your host. I quitted my minimum wage bag boy job to pursue the riches of real estate investing at the age of 17 and never looked back. I'm here to educate and inform entrepreneurs, young and old, how to become complete real estate investors by talking to the best and most influential minds of real estate. I'm joined by our guest today, the John Martinez. John is one of the top real estate investing sales trainers for wholesalers and investors alike. He's the founder of the REI Sales Academy, the most comprehensive and complete course for real estate acquisitions and sales. I'm happy to have you on today, John.
Man, I'm happy to be here. You don't know this about me, but my first job was a bag boy at a grocery store too. So
really, wow.
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. So that's how I got started in real estate. I was scrubbing toilets one day and I said, I gotta get at this. Discovered wholesaling. You know, I really didn't know anything about sales or acquisitions or anything. And I kind of went on a couple appointments, got really lucky with some real motivated sellers, made six figures. And then I hunkered down and I started looking on YouTube and I saw the Midwest Revenue Group and I just went all in on those videos.
Yeah.
And, it's, you putting out free content like that, it's made me so much money. I just thought I wanted to give back, have your message spread out to everyone. So let's get started with the most cliche thing. How did you get started with your corporate America job all the way to where you're at now?
Yeah, so it was just baby steps the whole way. As I said, started as a bag boy, then was Burger King, and then was a series of jobs until eventually about 19 years old, I got into sales, all commission sales, selling insurance, kind of door-to-door type thing. Worked my way up over the next 10 years through corporate America, just kind of the standard stuff, better and better roles, bigger roles, led some and built some pretty cool sales teams for some Fortune 500s. And probably 6 years ago or so, I hit that point. I wasn't as smart as you, man. It took me until I was 30 something to realize, wow, this is not, going to work for me long term. So that's when I took the leap and started my own business. And the most fun I had up until that point in time with any of the jobs I had was the sales training piece. So I said, I just want to go all in on that. And I launched my company as a sales training company. And it took us about a year to really dial into what niche we belonged in, and it ended up being in real estate investment. And for about the last 4 or 5 years, that's all I've really been doing is sales training for investors and acquisition agents and anyone out there trying to lock up deals.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's awesome. So I had a little bit of a problem coming up here. I knew I had John for 30 minutes to an hour. So I had two choices. I could talk to him and get as much real estate knowledge as I could about sales, or I could have him hop on some calls for me and do some calls with me. But I decided I wanted to really help you guys learn more about him and more about how to be a better salesman. So another cool question I had starting out here. So do you remember your first sale, 19 years old?
You know what? Looking back, I don't remember the actual sale, but I remember walking into the office with the paperwork and getting my first check, because up till then I made, until that sales job, I worked for a catering company. I delivered food and I made $8.25 an hour, which was a huge step up, because when I was bagging groceries, it was $4.25 or $4.15 or whatever minimum wage was back then, a long time ago. And I remember it because the way we got paid was not even like real estate investment, but it was a lot of money to me. It was twice the monthly premium we collected. So I remember my first sale was $700, and I brought in the application and the check into the office, and they cut me a check for $1,400, which was basically more than I had made in a month. And I was so freaking excited about that. So I don't even remember the first sale, but I remember walking into the office, laying down the paperwork, and having the receptionist, her name was Cindy. I remember all this as clear as day. She grew up on a watermelon farm. I don't know why that stuck with me. I guess it's just weird, but she cut me my first check in sales, and I was kind of sold at that point.
Wow. And would you say, starting out, obviously your insurance company you're working for trained you. Did you have any mentors starting out that really helped shape the way? Okay.
Yeah, a lot along the way, but my very first one, in insurance, I didn't know how to sell. Our sales training was just basically a little flip, a laminated flip book 10, 12 pages long. It's like, here's our rating with these, companies, and here's what we do, and here's why we're so great and how long we've been in business, buy some insurance from us. So I would just flip through and read those things and show them the pages, and then basically calculate a premium and ask for a check. So I had no sales training, and I didn't come to sales naturally. So I was really, really bad at sales. So about a year into it, I got, the company offered me my own agency because I worked my butt off. I really hustled and just kind of ground out that first year harder than anyone else I knew. So they offered me an agency, and I was kind of slapped in the face with the fact that I didn't know how to sell, because at that point, reality hit. I had to keep up my production, and it took me 60, 70 hours a week just to hit my quotas. But on top of that, I was supposed to hire and recruit and train a bunch of salespeople, which is like, recruiting is like the same as sales basically. So I failed miserably. And the company I worked for sent in this guy named Al Payone. He was this real short, stocky, he was a college football recruiter actually in Colorado. And he came down and he spent a week with me, and he taught me this pretty rudimentary but simple sales process that I use for both recruiting, selling, and training salespeople to sell. And that really turned my life and my career around. Taking what he taught me in that week, I went from absolutely struggling, all alone in the office by myself, not hitting any of my numbers, to, I don't know if it was 6, 7 months later, it was under a year, I was making about $250,000 a year. So it was all that week with Al. And that was my first major dose of kind of having a process, or just kind of a step-by-step process I followed for sales.
Definitely. So I know you're huge on processes. Also, I'm gonna reiterate this a million times, but if you're new in real estate, or you're struggling to get deals, or if you're making a lot of deals, you need to check John out on his YouTube. It's going to be below him right there on the graphic. Just check him out. Working out, just put a video on there, check it out. It's free content. He also has a paid one, but it's amazing. So what I really want to get into now is the processes. So can you break down, I know you have a paid sales academy and everything like that, but can you break down in like a gist the entire process from intake of a lead all the way to closing the deal?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. So, first of all, it's important to remember that it is a process and there's steps. And at any point in the process, your only goal is to really either move them to the next step in the process or just qualify them. First call, lead intake. Your goal isn't to sell them over the phone. It's all right, let's basically qualify them and see if they move on to step 2, or disqualify them because we know there's no way this will ever happen, and let's find that out as soon as possible. And really, that's important to remember as I go through these steps, that at every stage in the process, that's your goal, is to either just move them along to the next step, or determine that we can't move past this is impossible, let's cut this off instead of wasting a bunch of time trying to do a deal that will never ever happen. So lead intake. Lead intake is typically pretty simple. You just want to see, do they qualify for a next step, which is usually the next step is going to be a longer conversation. Sometimes it's over the phone and sometimes it's face-to-face, but that's it. And that lead intake could be over the phone. It commonly is. That lead intake could be over text message, which it is more and more now today, with text really playing a bigger part in the lead gen piece. It could be over email or any type of thing, but it's really just to qualify. And, if I'm going to make a couple of just key points about that first interaction, if I was going to do just 2 things and 2 things only that I wanted to make sure I checked off those boxes every time I intook a lead, no matter how it was, it would be number 1, to explain exactly what happens in this step, what we're going to do to kind of relieve any fears or questions or anything like that, and really eliminate pushback and eliminate anxiety that might go with an interaction like this. We might be used to doing it every day, but if someone calls in about this type of service, it's usually their first interaction ever. They don't know what to expect. So my first goal is, hey, just here's what to expect. My second goal, but more important, my second goal is going to be to really set the stage and let them know that, hey, listen, this is a no pressure situation. I'm not here to jam anything down your throat or take advantage of you. I'm going to answer your questions, give you information. And if you decide you want to take a next step, we'll just talk about what that looks like and kind of figure it out together. Hey, this isn't going to be a hard sale. I'm not going to pressure you into anything, and just kind of relax the situation as soon as possible. So it sounded like this. Hey, thanks for calling in. My name's John. I buy houses. Most people who call in usually have some questions about what we do, how we do it, how much we can pay for houses and that type of thing. Is that what you had questions about? Awesome. Anything else I need to answer for you this next minute or two? Nope, that's it. Cool. I'll answer all those questions. Got just a couple of questions to ask you right off the bat so I can give you those answers. And then after that, if you like what you hear, then we'll talk about potential next steps, and you can just let me know whether it makes sense to take that or not. So that's kind of a key opening. And I would just, everyone knows what to do past that point. You're going to get a little bit of information about the property and ask a couple of qualifying questions. Some people qualify deep, some people qualify not so deep. Doesn't matter. Just do what you do. And that's the end of step one. Step two is usually that longer conversation. And on that longer conversation, no matter where it is, what media you're using to communicate, there's really two main things that you want to absolutely cover. The two main things, number one is going to be motivation, and number two is going to be deal killers. So I'll jump into each one of those and then give some kind of real life examples so people can maybe pick up some of this and apply it. Motivation is important, but most investors look at motivation as kind of a checkbox. They kind of just go like, are you motivated? Is there some type of sign that you're motivated? They check the box and they move on. And I think when you do that, you miss the most important piece of motivation. The reason why we want to talk about motivation in a sales call is, well, there's a number of reasons. There's three really good reasons. Number one, sometimes your prospect hasn't really unpacked all the motivation. Sometimes they haven't connected all the dots. Like, okay, I know I'm in a tight situation, but let's think this through. This is what it's really causing. This is the real impact. This is the potential impact if we don't make any changes, and just really unpacking all the pieces to what's going on. Oftentimes they don't do that on their own. Nobody does. So you want them to get very clear on what their actual issue is and what happens if they solve it or don't solve it. So that's number one. Number two, you need that same information, because if you're going to recommend some type of solution, you need to know what problem you're solving, right? And you need to be able to connect those dots. Here's how this specific solution solves a specific problem you said you had. So that's reason number two. Reason number three is when we get into the science of decision-making, the psychology, the behavioral psychology, the neuroscience, kind of how we make decisions as human beings. The more we talk about motivation and the longer we stay in that conversation, it actually increases the urgency that we feel to take action. And it actually puts us in a decision-making state. So we want to do that as well. So we dive into motivation and we ask about, here's a couple good questions to dive into them. Hey, great property, great house. You lived here a long time, lots of good memories. Why in the world are you even considering selling at this point? Or you could take it from the other angle and go, you know what? Let me ask you this: if you sell, it's going to be 100% up to you who you sell to, how you do it, when you do it. But let me ask you this: if you do decide to sell to me or to anyone else at any time, why would you? And those two questions will start to help you uncover what their motivation is. You don't want to guess their motivation. You don't want to tell them why they should sell their house. What you want to do is find out why would you, and then you can focus your conversation on their reasons, not yours. All right, so now let's hit, once we dive in that motivation, kind of unpack it all. We understand, they understand, urgency to take action's kind of up there. What we want to do at that point is figure out why wouldn't they, right? The first half of the conversation is why would you? Second half is why wouldn't you? So those are commonly known in sales as objections. I call them deal killers because they kill deals. It's just I'm not the star out there, so I have to simplify it. So deal killers, and that's anything that might stand in the way of a deal, no matter how motivated they are. Because investors, when they're out there, they'll start to realize quick. It doesn't take a lot of sales calls to realize, wow, I was in front of a highly, highly motivated prospect, and for some reason I lost the deal or they didn't take action at all. And once you start seeing that so many times, you realize there's a missing piece. Motivation's not, it's great, but it's not everything. I need to find out what might get in the way. So you want to dive into those things. And, if you want to, you can just simply ask, why wouldn't you? Right. You could even just, you don't have to be fancy about it. You could just say, listen, it sounds like I understand why you would sell. I understand why you're thinking about it. Let's kind of play devil's advocate and figure out all the reasons why you wouldn't. Because if you are going to ink that contract, you're going to have to work through those things. If you don't bring them up, you're expecting them to sell themselves. You're expecting them to bring up every deal killer on their own and solve their own issues. When you proactively bring them up, you can walk them through that process and increase your odds of closing every deal and eliminating maybes and think it overs. So you just, whatever gets in the way of most of your deals, those ones that you think you had that you lost, those are the things I'd bring up. The most common ones are going to be around, just kind of uncertainty and risk and discomfort about the whole process. Good question to ask is, hey, let's pretend we agree on a price. We're completely happy with the deal structure. You wake up in the morning and you go, oh my gosh, this is happening. I'm going to have to move. Tell me, what are all the things you're going to have to figure out? What are the biggest worries about that whole process? I'm going to attack those. Another big deal killer is going to be influencers, people who are going to try to encourage them to do one thing or the other, or give their opinion or fight back. It could be tenants, it could be realtors, it could be family members. So a good way to ask about that is just, hey, is there anyone who's going to give you give you their opinion about what you decide to do, whether you ask for it or not? And how important is that opinion? What are they going to ask about? What's that conversation going to sound like? And you can start to dig through those things. I'd say the other big deal killer I'd ask about that they're going to have to figure out and work through before giving you an answer, yes or no, is just other options. So I'd proactively bring up, have you, I'm not your only option, obviously. And at this point in the conversation, I don't think either of us are really sure if I'm going to be the best option. Let's work through what else you can do. Have you thought about listing it? Why not? Have you thought about, can you keep it? Can you rehab it yourself? And I'm going to work through the top 2 or 3 other options they have and either help them eliminate them or figure out who my competition is. So when I craft my presentation, it's going to be spot on. So those are the 2 major things we do in a sales call. And then when we get to presentation, we just connect the dots. We just say, hey, here's how I'm going to structure the contract. You said this is important to you motivation wise. This is important to you as far as the reason why you would. So here's how I'm going to kind of help and structure the contract to facilitate that. Here's a couple of things you said you were concerned about that might get in the way. Totally understand. Here's how we're going to address those things. So that's just a really good high level overview of a sales call beginning to end.
Yeah, that's great. I think something to add there on the unpacking motivation.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know when you go on an appointment, you only get 10% of the story until you really uncover. I mean, one thing I had an appointment last week I went on, because I go on the appointments myself. So I go there and the guy's like, oh, I just want to sell. I'm sick of being a landlord. I'm like, what? Okay. And he gives me a crazy price. And I'm just talking to him. And then I go into the closet and I see 5 bullet casings that were like shot. I pick them up. I'm like, is this why? He's like, yeah. And then he goes into a big spiel. So I didn't even know about any of that. And apparently there was like a crazy gunshot thing going in the house and I got it for a great deal. But the unpacking the motivation thing is like, people don't want to tell you, but if you get to know them better. I know a podcast you said earlier, I was working out at the gym the other day. I was just hearing you talk and you said something really funny because my mom, my sister, all the females in my family love those Bachelor shows. And I think you said something about why they love someone. I know I'm butchering this, but they said because this person knows me better than anyone. And I feel like I get a lot of deals from that, just understanding and being the nicest and understanding them the most.
I agree. I think, we do a lot of things and we do business with people and we form relationships with people based on that fact that if we feel like someone understands us or a company understands us or a product is suited for us better than any other, we will usually pay more, do more to facilitate those relationships. It's the same way, or just a really common thing that everyone has experience with is, doctors and specialists. It's, Well, you can look at your copay card and your doctor has one price, it might be 10, 15, 20, $50 for a doctor's visit, but the specialist is always a boatload more, right?
Yeah.
Why do we all pay more for a specialist? Because they're a specialist. They understand whatever it is they do better than just the general doctor. And when we have an issue, we are more than willing to pay that specialist more money because they're better. They understand. We'll happily pay more. And in the world of real estate, people will happily give up more equity to work with someone who truly understands. So I agree with that 100%, man.
Okay. And another thing too is I hound my acquisitions guys. How important is it for acquisitions people and salespeople to get rid of filler words like buts, ums, uhs? How important is that in the whole sales
Yeah,
process?
I mean, it's important if you want to for credibility purposes. You can always have them. However you talk is how you talk. But if it gets in the way of the conversation and derails it, or if somebody feels like you're not credible, you don't know what you're talking about, then that can hurt the conversation. So it is important, not the be all end all, but the more you do anything, the better you're going to get at it. And I think the more ums and all those types of things that you have, it might make you look a little bit like an amateur, like you're just getting started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's one of the best reasons why I was successful starting out. When I went to my appointments 17, 18, I was the most confident guy in the room. I knew everything about real estate, even though I didn't know a thing. And I feel like that really helped me out.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the number one thing you can say to new salespeople and real estate investors to help boost their credibility when they look like babies?
Yeah, great question. The number one thing anyone can do is probably the opposite of what they would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of ties in and doesn't tie into what you were just saying. You want to know what you're talking about. You want to be confident, but you've got to be careful not to be overconfident and not cocky and not push for the deal so hard that you turn people off. So really the biggest thing is just to go into every potential deal with the attitude and the belief that you don't need that deal. When you are too hungry for the deal, when you push for it too hard, it doesn't feel right. People will push back, people will shut down, people will clam up, people will not like the way it feels. Most salespeople don't like the way it feels. So telling yourself and verbally over and over telling your prospect in a very nice way, not in a weird way, but in a very nice way that you don't need this and we don't have to do this is the best thing someone could do because it will just open up the breadth of the conversation. So something like, hey, listen, I just want to let you know right off the bat, I see a lot of houses, probably 10 or 15 a week. I only buy one or two. And the reason is because I'm looking for a perfect fit. There's certain things I'm looking for in a property, and there's certain things you're probably looking for when it comes to selling your property. So we're looking for a perfect fit for each person. And it only happens one or two out of every 10 or 15 houses I see. So I just want to say up front, I don't think we should move forward if it's not a perfect win-win for both of us. And, if we get to the end, and even if it's a good fit for me, if it's not a good fit for you, I just want you to feel comfortable telling me, it's not that perfect fit I was thinking it would be. It's not going to hurt my feelings whatsoever. I completely understand. My only goal here today is just to figure out, do we have a perfect fit or do we not? And as long as we can figure that out together, I am 100% happy with however this thing ends up, right? So that's just a really good attitude to have, and that's a nice way to voice that. And it will just relax the entire conversation, and you'll get into the deal killers and the motivation a lot deeper, a lot quicker once you kind of set that stage and set those ground rules.
Yeah, and I know I know you go to masterminds all the time and you're constantly changing the way that you're selling to the business that is changing rapidly. Real estate investing is always changing. I mean, what's your opinion on a lot of gurus and guys, some younger ones, some older ones that are saying, you got to stop going to appointments. You got to do everything virtual. You got to have a huge team. Is there a big difference, you say, between trying to close over the phone versus actually physically being in front of the seller?
95% of the conversation is the exact same.
Really? Okay.
But like anything else, there is no one right way to do anything. You have to
Mhm.
figure out what's right for you. Now, if you are producing 5 leads a week, by all means, go to every one of those appointments because you want to increase your chance or odds of closing all 5 of those deals. Now, if you have a business where you're driving 500 leads and you've got a few acquisition agents and you need to sort through them as quickly as possible, then it starts to make sense to do it over the phone. And hey, maybe there's a couple of really high value deals out there where you might visit them just to get the ball over the goal line, right? It
Mhm.
all depends on the business. So there's not one right way. For some businesses, go to every appointment. For a lot of one-man shows who drive very few leads and do very few appointments, it might make sense to do every single one.
Yeah.
For other organizations, depending on the marketing, what markets they're in, what resources they have, virtual is great. I'd say with our clients, I think we've got about 400 companies that we work with right now. And I would say
Wow.
30 to 35% either do it virtually, full-time, or part-time virtually, kind of a mix, a hybrid of going and doing it on site or over the phone.
Okay. But you would say if pound for pound going on it would have you have the better chance of getting a deal.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Totally.
All right, great. So another thing I want to transition to is, it's something more of an issue of guys trying to scale up versus, the guy doing it all himself, trying to learn your skills. So when it comes to hiring acquisitions people, I know you have a lot of people on your team. What are some of the core values you have in your company that are, if you don't do this, you can't be on the team?
Yeah. Again, it's probably the opposite of what most people think.
Okay.
All I want are people who have a good moral compass, who have no ego, and who want success. And I guess who can follow directions. Because if you have somebody with no ego and who wants to success, they will follow whatever process you put in front of them.
Mhm.
If they're all ego, that's typical, just really egotistical sales guy, you can't teach them, right? You can't, they're going to be as good as they are. And that's how good they're going to be forever. And that's it. So I want someone with no ego. I don't care if they've sold before or not. I just want someone who has a good moral compass, no ego, follows directions. And with that type of person, you can basically show them how to follow any type of process.
Okay. And so so do you feel like sales guys and for real estate investors, do you feel like you can sort of, if they have these core values, do you feel like you can sort of morph them into, sales killers, or is there any uh, intangibles that you can't do besides the ego?
So yeah, I think you can, and it's a process like anything else. It's like if you wanted to become a hot rod builder, it's not like, well, he was a born hot rod builder. It's, do you know how to put a car together? Do you know how to look at the design and figure out what's going to work, and then start systematically putting that vehicle together, sourcing your pieces? It's not an art form. It's a process, and when you follow the process, it feels and looks like an art form. But it is a process. It's a step-by-step, color-by-numbers process. That being said, some people will have some kind of hidden weaknesses that prevent them from following the process. There's things called like non-supportive buy cycle. There's things having to do with if you blame yourself, take responsibility, or blame others for things that go wrong. There's some hidden weaknesses that prevent you from following a process and learning. But if you just take those out, then yeah, it's a process. Like you could teach anybody to mow a lawn, cook spaghetti. You can teach anyone to sell as long as they don't have those kind of hidden mental weaknesses. We call it sales DNA that overrides their ability to follow a process.
Okay. Yeah. So a big problem we had trying to hire acquisitions guys is they physically didn't believe in themselves that they can buy $100,000 house for 50 to 40,000. And
Right.
I had last year I had a guy, he physically couldn't believe it. And
Right.
he really ruined a bunch of deals. I had to physically go there. I got the deals, but it's so important, I believe, for acquisitions that the guy actually believes in himself, and that would create more confidence.
Well, right. That's a combination of non-supportive buy cycle and what's called money.
Okay.
It's money belief is really what you think is a large amount of money, and some people have trouble believing that, my service is not worth this amount of money, or that's such a crazy amount of money. No one would, they have these different beliefs about money and are uncomfortable talking about certain amounts of money and so forth. And that gets in the way. The other thing is non-supportive buy cycle, which means if you wouldn't personally give up a ton of equity to have help with some specific problems, or the opposite. If you just look for always the best deal, top dollar, no matter what, no matter if you have to take 2 extra months to look and search under every rock, well, you're going to have a hard time in this business, because the way you think about what you buy is just so ingrained. You can't, when someone else says, I'm going to think about it, you just go, yeah, of course you are, because that's exactly what I do. So yeah, those are those hidden weaknesses I'm talking about. And what they do is prevent someone from following the process. They bail out when they shouldn't and don't have the right conversation because they just don't believe in themselves, but it is a belief system. It's not so much belief in themselves. It's just a belief in more other people and how they make decisions and what they value help for. And that's just it. I mean, I'm just going to leave it there, but I think you.
Yeah. You're definitely, you're a sales psychologist, sales, everything. I love it. So when it comes to sales psychology, what are some of the non-verbal things wholesalers can do to get better sales, better confidence, and, just make the seller trust you more?
Yeah, just be quiet. We naturally, human beings, naturally have the urge to fill silence, fill the void. And when we're on sales calls, we usually feel like it's our responsibility to do that and always be saying something or asking something or sharing something. But that's not the case. The more we shut up and use silence to our favor, the better results we'll get. If we ask a question or make a statement and we're just quiet, our prospect, the home seller, is going to feel that need to fill that void and will start sharing with us, sometimes without us even asking what that motivation is. They'll go deeper into it, what the deal killers are, and all we need to do is sit back and listen so we can start to put this puzzle together. And it's going to guide the conversation the right way. So it is a cliche, right? That great salespeople talk 10 or 20% of the time, but it's a cliche because it's true. You should ask a question and then just be quiet. I look at sales. So I'm a Missouri boy. I grew up there's rivers all around here, and I grew up spending my summers, floating down the river in canoes with my buddies and camping out on the, rocks at night. And I look at the sales conversation a lot like going down a river. Now, when you're canoeing down a river, you got the current that takes you, and you have oars, but the only reason you put your oars in the water is if you're about to hit something, if you're headed in the wrong direction, if you're going towards a fallen tree or a rock or rapids or whatever. That's how the sales conversation should go. You get the rapport built, and then that momentum, that current should take you. And the only time you open your mouth is kind of when you need to redirect in case you're headed in a wrong area or you need to redirect to the right area. You kind of put your oar in the water, you redirect with a statement or a question, and then you take it out and you just be quiet. And you let that current just kind of drag you all the way to the finish line.
Yeah, there's too many alligators in Florida for that for me, but yeah, that's great. I know another quote you like to say is the best salesmen talk 10% of the time.
Yeah.
And do you use CallRail at all?
I don't actually, no.
Okay. A cool part about CallRail is they have this feature on here that it shows you, it actually picks up audio from both sides, and it'll tell you how the percentage of the conversation, how long the agent is talking and how much the seller's talking. And I think it's a really cool statistic thing to look. I always look, and it's always 20-80 with me. I feel like I should be pushing it down a little more, but I think that's a really cool tool. And I think it's really, it talks about what you're doing a lot. So another thing I really wanted to ask you was, you're helping a lot of people out with your REI Sales Academy. I mean, what's pushing you forward? What gets you out of bed? What gets you motivated to help more people out?
That's a great question. It changes over time. I'd say when I started, it was, and I wouldn't say any of the reasons were the wrong reasons or that there's good reasons or bad reasons when it comes to motivation. I would say when I started, my main motivation was because I had a massive chip on my shoulder. I felt like I had stuff to prove. I thought that having all the cool stuff and money would make me happy, and that's what drove me. And a lot of people would say those are the wrong drivers because they're kind of self-centered and they don't come from a good place. And, looking back, I'm glad because that kind of, it pushed me when I needed to be pushed, and it motivated me to do good things. As time goes on, motivation changes, right? So that started to give way to, the more people I help, I get what I want. The more people I help and the better results they have, the more time I have with my family. And in return, the more time they have with their families. The better results I get for people, and the more people I help, allows me to focus on some of my other passions and hobbies and that type of stuff. And in turn, it also helps those people that I help do the same. So I think it changes over time. Just like a lot of our customers, when they first come to us, it's like, I just want to make $1 million a year. But then they make $1 million a year and priorities start to change. So I think when it comes to motivation, I think just figure out what your motivation is. Don't be, don't make it up and don't say, I'm doing this because of this big, bold, reason. Just be real with yourself, be truthful, and use that motivation to push you to the next level, knowing that, like Maslow's hierarchy, as you kind of do more and more, your motivations will change, and be okay with it. Grasp that motivation, use it to get to where you want to go, help more people, and just don't be afraid if it's a little selfish at first. It'll change over time.
Definitely. I see it change with all these guys. I like to ask you because we got a lot of young guys talking to this like me. I don't have a family. I don't have a wife, kids, or anything like that. And everyone says it's my wife, it's my kids. That's why I'm doing it. There's got to be something else. Right. And I think that's really important. I know you post pictures all the time of like your Ferrari, your boat, but if you look at the real pictures, it's you and your kids on there. And I think it's really, really cool.
But I'll tell you, you know what? I've got a Ferrari. I haven't driven it in 6 months. It literally just sits there. That's what I was saying. That was one of the goals. It's like, let's buy a supercar. And I did, and it was fun, and I loved the experience. But then it was like, all right, been there, done that. And it changed. It didn't change. And when I say it's my family, it kind of is driven because when I was building and getting all the stuff that I thought was important, I didn't feel like I was being the husband and the dad that I wanted to be. I didn't feel like my health was where it needed to be. And kind of drove me into kind of a depression. I'm just going to be honest with you, right? I didn't feel good. And not feeling good for so long drove me to reprioritize and go, okay, well, now I got the money and the stuff. I'm still not happy. So let's start picking apart everything that makes me not happy and changing that. So whether it's stuff, like I said, it's going to change over time. It was stuff at one point, not embarrassed by it. It's not stuff anymore. And I had a hell of a time with all the stuff. I still got it, but it does, and it will change over time.
Definitely. I feel like a lot of early sales guys who are using, they're not really running a business. They're doing one deal to the next, paycheck to paycheck, deal to deal. They really value their self-worth on how many deals they get. And I think it's really important people don't do that, because if your sales start slipping, your confidence slips, and it's a downward spiral. So that's why I like to get into that. I think it's really important people understand that.
Great point.
So in 2006, 2007, I wasn't even realizing any of the market crashes, anything like that. I mean, do you think your REI Sales Academy is going to start shifting more to trying to help people out with creative financing and short sales and trying to sell people on that?
So it already does. I'd say our customers right now have every exit strategy under the sun. It's not just wholesalers. It's the flippers. It's the buy and hold guys. It's multifamily guys. It's hedge funds. It's every exit strategy under the sun, because the whole sales conversation is the exact same. It's just the way you put your offer together at the end. When you connect all the dots, you're connecting the dots to a different product or service. So I don't think my business or our training will change at all, but I think my customer base, their exit strategies will be changing, but we'll always be teaching the same stuff, because it's just going to be a different recommendation at the end.
Okay. And what do you say to, I know a big thing is good moral compass, things like that. I live in Florida, which I joke around a lot. We do a lot of probate deals. We call it God's waiting room. There's a lot of old people. I'm not being mean by that. There's a lot of old people here. And I get a lot of deals from people that are 85, 90, 95 years old that just, they hate their mansions and they just want to go somewhere else. I feel like I get in a situation sometimes where it's a 90-year-old person and they want to sell for like crazy cheap. And I'm like, okay, you're not signing anything yet. Like, I can get this deal, but I need to call every single family member that lives in New York, New Jersey, Minnesota. I mean, do you feel like that's something you really should be doing, even if it gets in front of the deal and it possibly could destroy it?
If those people are deal killers, and you need to address them, or else they'll come in at the tail end and crush a deal for you, and sometimes there's no recovery. That being said, it is super important that we don't place our value system on our prospects. Some people are willing to pay whatever they want to pay to get rid of whatever their problem is, and we can't judge, well, that's too much or too little, right? For some people who, my mother and father-in-law, for example, have, they're huge dog people. They donate all their time to fostering dogs, taking to medical appointments, and you know, a lot of stuff. And they've got this devotion to dogs, and they have spent very large sums of time, money, resources, and energy to help dogs. Now, some people might say, that's too much money, that's crazy, that's too much time, you could be doing other stuff. But to them, the help that they give and the satisfaction they get from it, that they have a certain value they place on that. And it's nobody's business to say that's right or they're wrong. For me, I stopped doing boot camps this year. I did one. I went down to one a year instead of 3 or 4 a year. Now, we make $150,000 every boot camp. So for some people, they would say, John, you're not allowed to stop doing 2-day boot camps because that's a lot of money that you make. That is crazy to stop. But I value my time at, you know what, I would rather keep those 2 days and forfeit the money because my time is that valuable to me. And it's nobody's business. Nobody can say, John, no, that's not the value of your time. You have to do this or you can't do that. But to some people, that would be crazy, right? Because they're going to put their value system and they're going to try to place it on me and go, well, my time's worth $1,000 an hour, $100 an hour. So this doesn't make any sense for you, John, and try to tell me what to do. It's not our place to tell people what they should value stuff for. So if someone has a mansion and they want to get rid of it and they go, you know, I just want to freaking be done with it, and I don't care if I sell it for this much, we've got to realize they're coming from a different place. They value things differently, and it's not for us to place our value systems on them. It's only our job to help them work through that decision and go, hey, this is what the deal's going to take. Are you willing to, is it important enough for you to give up this in exchange for this? And you just help them through the decision, but it's important. It comes back to how you were saying, this comes full circle. You were talking about a sales guy that you had a lot of trouble because they conceptually didn't think that they could buy houses at the price that you're going through the same thing, right? You're going, it just at a bigger level. So you go mansion. Okay. So the money's bigger. Older people, I don't want to take advantage of them. You're starting to place your value the same as the sales guy, but you're just more advanced. Your limitations are a lot higher. So that's what I would argue is I'd say you're doing the exact same thing that sales guy did, but at a higher level. And you just need to realize, oh shoot, I'm kind of placing my value system on them instead of just being totally cool and saying, hey, if this is worth it to you, then we can make it happen.
Yeah, I heard, I'm like that because I had a lot of horror stories. You know, the 90-year-old, their son is like the owner of this huge lawyer firm, and they go after you, sue you, go crazy. I've seen it happen all the time. Another reason why I don't do RVMs in Florida, people are getting 6-figure fines garnished against them. And so things like that scare me a little.
Yeah, it goes back into deal killers. If it's going to, you're telling me that there's massive deal killers there. So yeah, if there's deal killers, you want to attack those. Absolutely.
Okay. So I really wanted to shift this to some parting questions here. You know, the one question I ask every real estate investor guru, I want to call you a guru because you focus on one part. You know, I see all these mastermind guys, they say, we're going to do acquisitions, we're going to do marketing, we're going to do X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. You focus on probably one of the most important things. And I just want to know, what could you tell the 16-year-old you, 17-year-old you, what would you do, you know, with your mind now to become the best acquisitions salesperson possible?
Yeah. it always comes, I am getting a little older, pushing 40. So the biggest lessons I've learned, there's probably two that I wish I knew when I was that age. One is just take action. I waited way too long all the way through my career to take certain steps. And I kick myself for it. It's just silly. It's stupid. And I can't believe I didn't, I waited so long to do certain things. So if an idea comes and you think it could be cool, just do it. Richard Branson's book, Change My Life, Screw It, Let's Do It. And it's basically chronicles his life and how every time he was faced with a decision, and the reason why he has multiple billion-dollar businesses and an amazing lifestyle is because every time he was faced with one of those decisions, he just said, screw it, let's do it. And he did it. Sometimes it turned out well, sometimes it didn't, but that philosophy was huge. The other thing that I've learned is the mindset thing, which again is a little cliche, but mindset is everything. And it's just so important not to poison your mind. For me, there's different ways to do it. For me, when I'm on the treadmill in the morning, I listen to TEDx talks and I listen to business stuff that I enjoy, and it kind of feeds my mind and puts me in the right mindset for the day. And just doing that in the morning makes me think differently, make different decisions, not let fear get in the way and those types of things. And I found that when I was really into the news and politics and that kind of stuff, I was just angry all the time. And I was a pessimist. And so feeding your mind the right stuff is really important too. So take action. And that's why masterminds work, right? Because you surround yourself in an environment. So it's the people you surround yourself, the stuff you listen to, the stuff you watch, all that kind of stuff plays part in mindset. And mindset ultimately will lead to whether you screw it and just do it or not, right? So mindset and action.
Definitely. I mean, I had to stop. So when I work out, I run in the morning and I do weightlifting at night. But like when I got my AirPods in and I'm running, I'm listening to the guests. Like for you, I prepared yesterday, the day before, hearing some podcasts with you. I had to stop because you said something and I went off the treadmill. I had to write it down, then go write it down. I'm like, I got to stop. I got to stop listening to John Martinez while working out. So that's the one problem I do have. So I definitely shift the music now, but that's great. So ending this, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about your free content that you do?
Yeah, if you go to our website, two ways to get there. REIsalesacademy.com will get you there, or Midwest Rev. Rev is short for revenue, MidwestREV.com. We've got tons of free videos, links to our YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff. Everything's on the website. You can contact us through the website. So that's kind of the central hub where you can get anything you want.
Okay, and my last question here is, I know a lot of guys might look at all your free content and say, you know what, this is it. I don't need to buy your thing. I don't need to do anything. I just listen to your free stuff. Where do you think is the point where someone should start purchasing your course?
I don't think that's for me to say. The way I see it is this: we provide tons and tons of free stuff, and there's going to be a certain amount of the population who can take it, use it, and not need any more. And that's ultimately the goal. That is a testament to quality. So if they can do that, I think do that. If somebody does that and they, there's a certain percentage of those people who go, I like it, I'm implementing it, but I'm not implementing it fast enough, or I'm not understanding it all the way, or I just want some guidance. I just want a shortcut. I know I could do this myself, but I'd rather just, hey, you just give me the shortcut and hold my hand and walk me through it personally. That's when it makes sense to go, well, maybe it's time to work with John. So my philosophy is, if you can take it and use it and never pay me a dime, absolutely do it. If you want some more help, you know where to find me.
Great. So I really appreciate you coming on here. I can't wait to have you on again, hopefully in the future. And please, guys, check him out, Midwest Rev. He is John Martinez on Facebook. He has an Instagram presence too. So please check him out, guys. This is Zachin signing out. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.